There you go. Okay, we're up to a new parak, Mem Zayin. Let's just go over the various avodas we've done until now. Yes, it's Art Scroll 2. It's a second volume Art Scroll. And Hesh, I started share. You started lifting weights in the middle of share. You couldn't do it before you. Dafka in the middle of share. Anyway, so we said he did the vidu on the par. He did the goyrel on the 2 goats. He set up the goats to the place where you're going to send out the ser mishtaleach with red ribbon between its horns. The ser that is going to be nasel bilifnim is standing on the ulam, is standing with a red thread around its neck where it's going to be geshachtin. He has shechted his par. He received the dam. He gave the dam to another kohen who's sitting in the 4th step of the azara and stirring it to make sure it doesn't coagulate. He now is going in and beginning the avodah of the ketores. The avodah of the ketores, we said, involves He has gone up. He has taken a shovel full of coal, 3 kavim to be exact, in a golden shovel. He's left that also on the roivit on the 4th step. And now he's going in to go ahead and get the actual ketores that he will burn. So we begin the new parak, Mem Zayin Amid Aleph. He takes out, what's he taking out? From the Lishkas HaKelim, from the chamber that had the klisharis in, he took out a esakaf, ve'esamachta. He took out the kaf, the spoon that would have the ketores in it, the esamachta, and also the shovel. Now, the Gemara is going to ask, I thought he took the shovel already out. And the Gemara is going to answer, that's the shovel full of hot coals. This is the shovel full of ketores, of which he will take 2 handfuls from. So this is machta, is not a machta that has in it coals. It's a machta that contains ketores. And chafein malei chafanov, he now did this. He put the malei chafanov 2 fistfuls of handfuls of ketores. And he placed that amount in the kaf. There is no set standard amount of the ketores. It's whatever the amount that the kohen's hands can contain. As we're going to see, the Gemara quotes a person, a kohen, who had such large hands that there was even more ketores than there was coals. It was heavier because he had really big hands. So you see, it's not a standard amount. Right, but it depends upon the size of the kohen's hands. In addition, nowhere in the Torah does it mention anything about a kaf. This is all from the Torah Shabbat Peh, that you have to go ahead and put it in the kaf, because as we're going to see, physically it'd be an impossibility to go ahead and bring a molech chafanov in with a shovel on top of his hands to bring it in. So obviously it has to be, again, you only have 2 hands. And they can't be full of ketores when you have to bring in a bunch of shovelfuls. So we're going to go through the logistics of how that was done. It's very, very, very geschmack daf. Really, Yoma again is always geschmack mesechta. The godl, the kohen godl according to his hands, and the cotton according to his hands, depending on the size of the kohen godl, as I just mentioned. The kachoisa midasa, that was the amount, that was the midah. Natlas hamachta b'yamino, he would take the coal. Now this is the machta, is the coals. This is not the machta with the ketores. That already is finished with. He now goes ahead. He's going to the roivid where the coals were in a fire pan. He takes the fire pan. The esakaf bismolo. The Gemara is going to ask, l'chora, the ketores is what is more chashiv than the coals. Why is he not carrying the ketores in his right hand, which is more chashiv, and the shovel full of coals in his left hand? These all will be addressed in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, machta tonale. Right? Machta, all of a sudden, he's taking out a machta from the lishkas hakelim. Not a less a machta for all the Rosh Mizbeach. We learned previously. He took the machta, went to the top of the Mizbeach, the chaytich, and he went ahead and he stirred the coals from side to side. The yair, and he came down. So what do you mean now? He's going in and getting a machta. We already had the machta, but you know the answer to it, right? Hasam over there, machta the gechalim. Over there was a fire pan full of gechalim. Hasam machta, it's a shovel full of the ketores of ketores. It's 2 totally different machtas. One is a shovel that I'm referring to as a fire pan. The other one is a ketores spice-filled shovel. Titania, as the Brisa elaborates upon, they would take out an empty spoon from the chamber where they keep the klishares, umachta, and they would take out a machla, and that machta gedusha shel kataris. This they would take out from the base of tinas. That's where they made the kataris. They would take a shovel full of gedusha heaped up at kataris, milishkas base of tinas from the house of the lishka, as known as base of tinas. Chafin mali chafon of nice kaf. That was the amount. Fred Gemara, kaf b'yom kippurim lamali. Where in the world doesn't mention anything about a kaf? Why does it never mention anything about a spoon? All of a sudden you have a spoon? What's a spoon coming in here? Says the Gemara, and for the Gemara, lamali meloi chafona v'hevi amrachmana. It says a handful, 2 handfuls, and he brings it in. So why is he bringing in a calf? Why don't he just go in with 2 handfuls? And for the Gemara Mishnah Lo Yafsha, it's not a Gezeres Kosiv, it's just simply why that it's practical. There's no halacha in the calf. It's a practical means of performing the avodah. It's not a din it has to be in the calf. It's a practical thing it has to be in the calf. Right? Where do you see that from? The Hechi Never, what should he do? Nile to go ahead, bring the shovel of the fire pan in, v'hodar, Nile, go out and come back in again. In other words, make 2 trips. So what does the pasuk say? Haba achasam rachmana. The pasuk says vehevi mi beis laparoiches. It says vehevi in Rashma. He only comes in once, so you can't make 2 trips. Rachmana v'loishtei avois nishakle likatoires b'chayfnav. Go ahead and take the katoires in his hands. V'nachte lamachta Allah v'layo, and put the machta on top of his hands and go in. Now it must be that there's some type of either thickness that you're not getting the heat, or that would be very, very painful, right? Hot gold on top of your hands. But why? So therefore, you wouldn't need a kaf. You're holding the kataris in your hands, and now on top of that, you have the shovel full of coals. So why don't you do that? And there will be no need for a kaf. Says Gemara, Heichila Ovid, Kimate Hasam, when you get into the Kodesh Kodashim, Heichila Ovid, what would you do? Okay, so let's picture this. He's got his hands like this, full of Kataris. On top of that, he's got what? He's got a shovel full of coals. What's he going to do? He has to manipulate it with his mouth or his neck or something like that. So what will he do? Heichin la'avid, nishakle b'shinecha, take the fire pan with his teeth, v'nachte lemachta, hashta lefnei melech basav v'dam, einoisen came lefnei melech malchi amlach magalish baruch hu, halachas kama v'kama. How nice would that be, right? Think about it. Standing in front of the king and you're going like this. It's not Kovadik. So obviously that's not a plan. It's not a plan to have a mali chafan of ketoiris and a shovel full of fire that you're trying to manipulate with your teeth. That's not going to work. So therefore, what do you have to conclude, right? Hilkach lo efsha, since it's not possible. Since it's not extra, you know what? We have a source in the Torah by Nesiyim. Right? Sound familiar? Pashas Nasai, the Pashas in Nesiyim. So we have a kaf. So the male very geshmak. That's why you have the kaf. So again, the kaf is not a din, right? In Achinami, the kaf is what is a practicality. Nonetheless, he would hold the fire pan in his right hand, besakaf besmol, and the kaf with the kataris in his left hand. Fred the Gemara, Yitziva ba'ara v'giyura b'shmei shmaya, is the citizen on the ground and the stranger in Shmayim. This is the Gemara's way. We have it quite a few times in Shas of saying your logic would appear to be totally distorted. In other words, it would make much more sense to have the kaf of kataris in his right hand and the shovel full of fire in his left hand. So why is it the opposite over here? It says Gemara, Zumaruba v'zumu at this. It's another practicality. Zumaruba, the coals are practical, and the kohen his right hand is stronger, and the left, and the one is less. The kataris is left. He's going to put it in his left hand. And even when they're both equal. In other words, even if they're both equal, nonetheless, you're going to go ahead and keep it this way. Even if they're both equal, you're going to go ahead and keep it this way. Where do you see that? Ukemaisa Rabbi Yishmael ben Kimchis, like the Maisa of Rabbi Yishmael ben Kimchis. Right? Take out the next few words. Omru Lava Rishmol ben Kimchis Shayachayfein Arba Kavin Bivaloi Chafanov. He was able to get in his two hands, guys, Arba Kavin. That's one more kav than the Yom Kippur coals, right? Kav is a weight. So obviously 4 kavim of Ketairis way more than 3 kavim of coals. And nonetheless, he's still going to carry the coals in his right hand. That's the Kiddush. So where did this guy get his huge hands from? He said, here's the reason he gave it. Kol anoshim zerdu v'zered. Every woman zerdu zered. We're going to see what that means in a second. And ima ola lagag. But my mother, she went up to the roof. In other words, her zerud was bigger than most. Ikka the army ba'arsin. What does zerud mean? Says the Gemara, zerud means a type of brand, a type of cereal that they would give to sick people. Beheroyon, she was sick. I guess when pregnant women are considered sick, so they give them this. The Gemara in Bracha says this is for health, and she had an abundance of it. As a result, she had an abundantly healthy child. So Zerdu, my mother, she ate more arson than everybody, and therefore she was the healthiest. The Rabbi Yonasan, I'm Rabbi Yechiel, arson yaful l'chayla, and arson is good for the chayla. My mother ate a lot of arson, therefore I was physically gifted. Vika the army, v'shichva zera, the zera is the lashon of zayreya, to winnow, that took out the best part of the shichva zera to make me. Uchid Rabbi Avo, then Rabbi Rami, ksiv v'tazreini chayel l'mulchama, uksiv hamazreini chayel l'mulchama. So one has an aleph and one doesn't. I'm a dove of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rebbeinu Shalom. Say Risani is a lotion of Zoira, is to winnow out. You separate the wheat from the chaff. This is Tani and gird me with strength. So he had both. He was gone ahead. He was winnowed out his zera, and in addition, he was girded with strength. So too, this person Yishmael ben Kimches. Amru Lav Yishmael ben Kimches Pamachas Siper Devorim Arvei Echad B'Shuk. One time he was speaking to an Arab in the street, and spittle from the Arab. Now again, the goyim has a halacha of a zav. The spittle fell on him, right? And his brother Yeshevav took his place. Rasa Iman and the mother Kimchis was Zeicha Shnei Kohanim Gedolim Yamecha to see 2 Kohanim in one day. Now, exactly how he was speaking to an Arab on Yom Kippur, what's he doing going out? So this Maharsha here says it was Erev Yom Kippur. So Erev Yom Kippur, he was speaking, and I guess you have to say he didn't have time to go to the mikvah, or else he would be at full yoim, would be mutter to do avodah the next day. That's one approach, right? Another approach, it was Yom Kippur, and this was the king of Arabia, and therefore the cover the king, he went out. So either way, that would explain the Pekisha, the meeting between him and his Zav, a halacha, a rabbinical Zav on Yom Kippur. But his brother took his place. The
spittle of his Zav doesn't make you a...
It's a Gavaldiga Kasha. So Benji's asking, the spittle of his Zav is an Avatuma. So it's going to make the clothing a rishon. How's it even time of a person? Okay, the Ayin Sefer, it's a Tumid Rabbanan. Sefer Avodah Seyam Yeshikasha. He said it's a Maila B'Kotchim that they did. Excellent Kasha. Baruch. I think we should give you the shorts and go to the swimming pool. V'shuv amru alav al Bishmael ben Kimchis. Pamachas yotza v'siper im oden echa b'shok. The same thing. V'nitza tzinoires mipiv al begodov. V'nichtiv Yosef achiv. And his brother Yosef came v'shimish tachtav. And he took his place. V'rosa iman and Kimchasor shnei kahanim gedolim yemechad. So we have 3 now. We have Yishmael. We have Yeshevav, and we have Yosef. Tanrabanan. Shivas bonim hoyeloy lekimchis. Kimchis had 7 sons. V'kulan shimshu b'kahuna gedoyla, and they were all zeicha to go ahead and be mishamish b'kahuna gedoyla. Amalach Chachamim, for the very famous Gemara, especially in girls' chinuch. Ma'asis, what did you do? Shezachzel lekach. Why did you do that? You were zeicha to have 7 sons be mishamish b'kahuna gedoyla. So Amr Lahem, Miyamai Leiroi Koris Basi Kolosara. All the days of my life, the beams of my house, they never saw the braids of my hair. So Amr Allah, they told her, Harba Asu came, many people did this, and she doesn't answer that. So the bottom line is halachically, a woman is able to walk around the house as long as she's in her own chutzah where no one can see. She's able to walk around the house and in blazing cup. And the husband should be aware, if his wife is wearing a blazing cup, that he can't make brachas or say Kriya Shema in front of her. You should be aware that if your wife does not cover you in the house, it's an erva, and you can't say Kriya Shema Dvar Kedusha in front of her. You can't bench in front of her. You should be aware of that. But this woman, but halachically you're able to do that. However, we see that there's an extra level of tznius, that even when one is in the house, right? So now the girls always ask me, so you mean she took a shower? They didn't see the beams of the house. She washed her hair. So if you look at Taisus Yeshanim says on the Lairo Kars Basi Kaloi Sarai, the house they never saw the braids of my hair. In a time when she was able to cover it. In other words, obviously in a time where she wasn't able to cover it, then what? Then she wouldn't cover it. If she was washing herself and washing her hair, she wouldn't cover it. But any other time, she kept her hair covered. Now, l'chaira, there's a few things over here. We spoke out, guys. If you don't have an art school Gemara, if you look at Daf Tes, if you don't have an art school Gemara, that means if you look at Daf Tes, this is a very famous Gemara that we went through. The Gemara here said, Yiras Hashem Yosef Yomim, that a person who fears Hashem, his days will be increased. Zem Migdash Rishon, that's the first place of Migdash. Sha'aman Arba Meyas Ve'es Hashanim, it stood for 410 years. V'leishim Shaboy Ella Yudches or Yud Beis Kahanim. Masha'en Kain, Bayasheni, Sha'aman Dalet Meyas Ve'es Hashanim, it stood for 10 more years, 420. V'shim Shaboy Yosem Mishalish Meyas Kahanim. With Mishamish more than what? Than 300 Kohanim. Say mehem, deduct from the number of 420, Mem Shana Shashim Shimas at Tzadik, the 40 days of Shimon at Tzadik, Ushmoina Shashim Yochanan Kohen Gadol, the 80 of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, 120, Esa Shashimish Yishmael ben Pabi, and 10 that was Mishamish Yisrael ben Pabi, right? Another 10, and Vimila Yud Aleph Shashimish Avlas ben Chasim. And you'll make a cheshbon that these kahanim did not even last a year. Good? And we spoke it out. It was a political position. They were Rishoyim. They were Tzedaikim. Okay, great. Freg the Marsha, obviously the Shishmol ben Kimchis, the mother was such a Tzadekis, that these 7 children, it couldn't have been that each one died. Then what kind of schus is that? I had 7 kids who died, 6 in my life. I mean, what kind of schus is that? Right? So Freg the Marsha, why don't the Gemara include Yishmael ben Pabi with Yishmael ben Kimchis? And for the Marsha, it's the same person. Yishmael ben Kimchis is the mother's name. Yishmael ben Pabi is the father's name. Pabi's the father. It's the same person. It's the same individual. And therefore, it's included. So if you look at Taisus Yeshana Bayos, guys, V'kula shimshu b'kuna gedoyla. Back to Mem Zayin Amad Aleph. V'kula shimshu b'kuna gedoyla. Ki going she'ira psul be'echad mehem. It's not pshat they died. They saw a psul in one of them, similar to the Gemara where the spittle fell on them. V'lehoya az oisay sheshimesh rishayin b'makam kohen gadol sham. The hapshita shlei kivartem mid'shavecha avilei. Pashit, she didn't bury them when the Torah goes ahead and praises her, when the Gemara praises her. So she saw 7 of her sons that they were. Now it doesn't say. Listen to the guy's a beautiful diak. It doesn't say she had 7 sons that were kahanim gedolim. It says she had 7 sons sheshimshu b'kahuna gedolah. They were all mishamish in the position. She had 1 son that was the kohen gadol. You know who that was? Yishmael. Yishmael was a son. And when Yishmael couldn't make it, 1 year, Yeshevav did. And the next year he couldn't make it, or some other time he can make it, then Yosef did. And another time he couldn't make it, then another son did. But they all lived. And that's a schus. They weren't all Kahanim Gedolim. They all were Mishamish on Yom Kippur as a Kohen Gadol. Now, this had to take place in a 10-year period, guys, right? Because it says 10 years. So I don't know how Yishmael was a tzaddik, but at 7, that's not a great batting average, right? That's 7 out of his 10 years he didn't make it. Sorochian, right?
You make the All-Star team at 300. You made the All-Star
No,
team.
that's in baseball. It's not in Judaism. In Judaism, we want a higher statistic, Baruch. Chaim Liza. Okay, good. Okay, but it's geschmack, right? It's geschmack. The Zushtel guys, the Ben Pabi and the Kimchas, is very geschmack, no? Okay. So getting back to some Londis. It says the Hermi Menu Bekumtsoy. When we're going to zushtel guys the koimetz by the mincha, we're going to zushtel that to chafonov. In both cases, it's subject to the size of the person's hand. Now we're familiar. The koimetz is the part that we take from the amount that you take a card mincha, you be magdashit with your peh, say I want this weed or whatever it is to be used for a mincha. You bring it to the Beis Hamikdash, they put it in a kli shares, and now as kedushas aguf. From that kli shares, the kohen would take a koimetz. That koimetz was tantamount with shchita. He then placed it in a kli shares. That's kabbalah and v'chahena. So we're discussing the act of what? Of taking that koimetz. How much is it going to be in his hands? This is a play off the chafonov of the kohen gadol vis-a-vis the ketores. This is the okay. Says the Gemara. You don't make a middle koimetz. You don't go ahead and take every kohen has a certain standard. You don't take a standard, but you use the iboilu. In other words, I know you can't make a midah, you can't make a measuring device for a koimetz because it says v'hermi menu. What about chafonov? What about, let's say, the kohen gadol measures? That's the case. In other words, for Yishmael ben Kimchas, we'd make a 4-kav midah. Or for this kohen, we make a 3-kav midah. Or this kohen too. In other words, we'd measure how much he can get. We'd make a kli, and then you wouldn't have to. Can we do that? Or no? Does he have to go ahead and use his hands? That's the Gemara's kasha. Now we know by koimetz you can't do it, but iboilu mashi yasu midah lechafina. What about chafina? Hasam hu dichsiv b'koimtzai his koimetz aval hachad leikasiv b'chafanov. In his big koimetz with his koimetz b'chafanov alamali chafnov. It just says the amount in his hands ketarisamim daka loy. In other words, in his hand, it says the amount that it could be in his hand, right? It could be that amount. Dilma, or perhaps yolif malay mikoimtzai. Or we learn out malay mikoimtzai. Or we learn out malay mikoimtzai. And just like by the koimetz, you can't have a measuring device, so too by the kohen gadol, you can't have a measuring device. So too tzadim. Big koimetz, mamish, it has to be. It doesn't say bichafonov, it just says chafonov. And therefore you could make the measuring device. Or no, gzeir shava, miloi, malachafnov, to mali koimetz, what? You wouldn't be able to make a measuring device. Toshma, the kachois midasa, the meat, it said in the Mishnah, he takes gadol lefi gadloi, cotton lefi cottonoi, and we say that is the midah. Says Gemara, my lav shem ratzalazis midah oisa, that if he wants to make a measuring, he can. Because we just have to know how much his hand contains. But once we ascertain that, go ahead and make a kli that contains that amount. Loi hachi kamar. V'kachoy yechoyze v'choyfnav lifnim. And that's what it doesn't, the meat, in other words, that amount that's in his hands, that's the midah he would walk in and place on the ketoris when he's inside. So here we're seeing that what? You're going here, and we want to know, the Gemara is a shayla, do you go ahead when he comes inside, guys, look, listen to Shiloh. What's he doing now? He's taking the chafanov, he's putting it in a spoon, he's coming inside the Kodesh Kodashim. Fred the Gemara later on, when he's in the Kodesh Kodashim, does he take it directly from the spoon and pour it on the coals? Or does he take from the spoon, put it from his hands, and put it on the coals? So clearly from Mishnah, you should be able to be it that he's got to take it from the spoon and put it in his hands. So what's the Gemara Shaila later on? In other words, you're learning now that Mida means that the Mida of his hands, obviously you have to use his hands when he goes inside. Says no raya. Dilma Shem Ratzalasas Mida Oisa. Perhaps if he wants, it's no raya. In other words, as we always say, when the Gemara says Shema Mina, that means the only possible, we've checked every single possibility, and this is the ultimate truth. That's what Shema Mina means. Since I can say the possibility means you could do this rather than this, then therefore you don't have a proof. But not a raya that you can go ahead and have to put it back in your hands. Inami, or else you shouldn't give more or less in your hands. It says so now you have this. I might think if it's overflowing out of the sides, whatever is in his kaimitz, guys, it's got to be in his kaimitz, not overflowing either way. So I might think kaimitz means this, only the tops, not this. Like people do. Okay, Tzad. He puts his hand into the flour. He goes like this. Al pieces yodai for kaimitz, and he goes on the base, and it goes like this and like this. So that's the kaimitz, guys. The kaimitz is anything between these fingers. He brushes it off with this and this. Now, there are minchis that are, you're not putting it in flour, raw flour that's mixed with oil. You're putting in pieces that have already been fried or baked. That's called the minchas machavas or macheshes. Machavas is a flat pan, macheshes is a high pan. That's going to be very tricky. Guys, here's what you have to do. You have to put it in. Then you have to cut off. Let's say you have a piece of think of this. Take a piece of the rye bread, a piece of rye bread, and you have not the middle. You have what's it called? The crumb, not the crumbs. What's it called? The side. I can't hear.
The crust.
The crust. You have the crust, right? If you take a piece of rye bread, you go like this with the crust, a piece of crust is going to come out from over here. If you do that, guys, you're going to be missing your kaimitz. It's going to be chaser. So you have to be able to cut off the crust over here and over here. Says the Gemara, uvemachvas umarcheshes, in the deep pan, in the flat pan of the deep pan, moichik, you go ahead and you level off. Bigoidloi milmaila, with his thumb on top, ubeetzboi, and with his pinky, beetzboi katana, his pinky, milmata below. Vizuhi avoid the kosher sheba migdash, and this is the hardest avoid in the migdash, as we can imagine, right? It's very, very hard. Fred Gemara zuhi v'suloi, that's the hardest, and it's not anymore. It's hard. I have ikka malika. Malika, guys, you had to take the bird, hold it with one hand, like this, hold its wings down, and go with your finger, pierce its neck in the back, go through bone and sever the trachea and the esophagus. Chafina, as we're going to see, the act of the Kohen Gadol was almost acrobatic, what he was required to do to get it, the shovel pan, and to get the spoonful of ketoris into his two hands. When he needs two hands to do that, we're going to see it was quite a feat. So what do you mean this is the hardest, taking the kaimitz of the machvas and marcheshes? You have two others, the chafina and the malika. Elazu, he may avoid this kosher list. It's one of the top three. You got malika, you got chafina, and you have what? And you have the kmitza. Rabbi Yochanan, boy Rabbi Yeshua ben Uzzah, bein habinayim shel moli kaimtzei mahu. Okay, this is a very interesting shayla, guys. Watch. When you do the kaimitz, I go like this and I go like this. Good. Anything that's in here is considered part of the kaimitz. Good. Yeah. What about between my fingers? Is that part of the kaimitz or not? That's the shayla. And since it's a suffix, it creates a tremendous problem, as we'll see. Okay, two hakdamis, guys. After you bring the kaimitz, the leftovers is called shirayim. Let's say I do the following. Watch. I go ahead. I do the kaimitz. I'm bringing it over. So here's my kli. I do the kaimitz. I'm bringing it over, and now from this kli spills out some of the shirayim. The kaimitz I do doesn't work because it's kaimitz that was chasa, the shirayim was chasa bein kemitza v'haktara. I have to be able to make sure that all of the shirayim is intact when I go, in fact, go ahead and burn the kaimitz. If anything's missing from here, it's a no-no. That's one problem. A second problem is anything that's supposed to be off the mizbeach, if it's burnt on the mizbeach, it's a lav, loisaktiru. Anything, you're not supposed to burn something that is not supposed to be on the mizbeach. Says the Gemara, with that in mind. So Rabbi Yochanan, boy Rabbi Yeshua ben Uzah, very interesting name. Rabbi Yeshua ben Uzah asked the following question: Bein ha-beinayim, the flour that's between his fingers, shel mali kaimtzai, of his full kaimitz mahu. Rav Papa qualifies the question. Digavoi loiti boilach devade kaimitzu. Guys, if your fingers, there's three parts to your finger. There's the under part of your finger, there's the top of the finger, and then there's between your fingers. So what's in between your fingers facing the bottom, you'll be able to see that clearly is part of the kaimitz. That's clearly in bounds. That's outside above your fingers, even though a little bit is inside, that's clearly out of bounds, and that is not part of the kaimitz. That you can level off. The shaila is you can't see it. It's totally enveloped between your fingers. That's the shaila. So the Papa just qualified the shaila. It didn't change the shaila. It just said exactly on which particles of soilus is it shaykh the shaila to. So that's the shaila. Kiti, the one that's inside like tiboy loch devade kaimitzu. The broi, the one that's outside like tiboy loch devade shirayimhu. Kiti boy loch the beni mai. Beni, what's the din? So Rabbi Yochanan, hada pashta Yeshua ben Azah, beina benayim sveikeninu. It's a suffix. You know why? I don't know what to do. Hey Chiyavid, what can you possibly do? So Rab Chanina, I'll give you two possibilities. Mak the kaimitz lechudei, the kaimitz that's in your hand burn. Tchila, v'hoda bein abinayim. So what are you going to do? I'm going to go ahead and put this in, open my fingers, scrape off whatever's in there, and burn that. Let's see, what's the problem with that? If you say you put between the fingers first, dil mishirayim ninu, maybe it's shirayim. V'havile shirayim shechasu ben kemitza la'ktara. It'd be shirayim again. What's the case? I went ahead, I did this, and before I got to burn this got chaser. If that happens, it's a no-no. So if you're going to burn between the fingers first, and that's shirayim, then the kaimitz won't be good because I'm lacking shirayim. I'm missing the stuff that was between my fingers is the leftover of this. It's all considered one and the same. If it's one and the same and I don't have it anymore because I burnt it, then I can't do the kemitza. So the possibility of burning the beina binayim between the fingers first, that doesn't exist because of this possibility. It's going to be considered. Shirayim shechasu ben kemitza la'ktara, eimaktirin aleim as a kaimitz. You can't go in and burn it. So what do you do? So you burn first the kemitza, and then you burn ben abinayim. So therefore, if it's shirayim after I burnt the kaimitz, that's okay. Well, no, it's not okay, right? Heshi, it's not okay. Ihachi, right? Hashta nami ikri kan. Kol shemimenu leishim, anything that from it you put on the ishim already, anything that's left over, harihu b'bal saktiru. In other words, anything that doesn't belong there, doesn't belong there. You can't go ahead and put shirayim and burn it. So memanu shach, you got a problem. If you burn it early, then it's chasa, and if you burn it afterwards, you're not allowed to. So I'm stuck. What do you do? It's a suffix. What do you do with the bein abinayim? In other words, guys, this is a universal problem by any carbon mincha. You hear this? It's a universal problem. What do you do between the stuff between your fingers? I'm going to use the Rabbi Yeshua and Pazi. The makdalei l'shum eitzim, Rabbi Eliezer. You go ahead and burn it l'shem eitzim l'Rabbi Eliezer. The Tanya of Lezoimer l'reich nichoyach yatamala avlatamala l'shem eitzim. Okay, guys, outside. I bought a carbon chatos. Everything's okay. I did the srika, I did the aktara, everything's gavaldik. I cut up the pieces of the ivarim. I'm about to sit down and have a good meal, and they get mixed up with what? With the carbon oil. They get mixed up with the carbon oil. What do? In other words, I can't burn the chatos. I have to burn the oil. So what do? To take it out to the Beis HaSreifa and burn it, I can't do that. Why? Because I'm going to be bringing an oil Beis HaPsul. To eat it, I can't, because maybe it's an oil. So what do? Says Rabbi Eliezer, I got an eitzah. Bring it up as an oil, the whole thing. You're burning what? Call me menalishim, you're burning a chatas. Bring the chatas up, l'shem eitzim. Don't bring it up as a carbon. Say the oil pot's the oil pot, and whatever is not the oil pot should be l'shem eitzim. It should be considered wood. So too over here, the same thing. First, make a tanai. If it's part of the kaim, it's great. And if it's part of the shirayim, then it should be l'shem eitzim. So, Lord Rebbe Eliezer, you have an eitzah how every carbon mincha could be brought. The stuff that's kaimitz, you burn. The stuff that's between your fingers, you make a condition. If it's part of the kaimitz, then no problem. If it's shirayim, it's not a problem either, because I'm bringing it up l'shem what? Eitzim. I'm not bringing up l'shem carbon. So I won't be over carbon okay. Says the Gemara that works out great. However, says the Gemara, Rebbe Eliezer, El Rabbanon who disagree with Rebbe Eliezer there in the Seftes Vachim, what are you going to say? So let's look for a corpulent Kohen. Amar Rav Mari, the Kamsi Shemene, you have a corpulent Kohen doing it. If you have a corpulent Kohen, there ain't any stuff getting stuck between his fingers, because his fingers are a lot of thick. A geraba Kohen. Now that you arrived at this, that every kohen that does the mincha should be agraba. Again, Rebbe Eliezer's eitz is only b'di'evet, guys, right? If the korban evari chatas get mixed up with evari oila, this is what you do. But lichatchila, you don't bring something to shem eitzim. So in Mela, this is a much better eitzah than coming on to what? Good. Rebbe Eliezer has a fallback. Rebbe Eliezer is a fallback. You could bring l'shem eitzim. Even if you don't, we have a better terrace now. Lichatchila, let a hefty kohen do it. If a hefty kohen does it, you don't have a problem, and very geschmack. So again, very nice sugya. We saw today the beginning the process of the kohen gadol getting the amount. It's his hands. It's mashma. He uses his hands. He puts it in a kaf. Not that there's a din in the kaf, but it's a practical reason why a kaf similar to Nesiim. We saw a beautiful Gemara about Kimchis, the special woman. So you see the Reb Chaim Shmulevitz speaks out that it's not what they do. It's this woman, the chashiv is how she held herself. You're permitted to. Many women went ahead and did it, but how did they do it? Reb Chaim says it must have been her kavod in doing it, her perception of herself, how she viewed herself, that had such a chosh of a son. We saw a tremendous chiddush that Yishmael ben Kimchis, according to Mashal, was the same as Yishmael ben Pabi, as we saw in Daf Tes. He served for 10 years. We ascertained that 7 of those years he did not perform it because he had his brothers performing it. We also medayik that his brothers were not Kahanim Gedolim, but Shimshu B'Kuna Gedolah. We had a Shaila what by the Molech Chafonov. We're going to see that the next day, tomorrow on Motzei Shabbos. We're going to see this din of Bein HaBeinayim. What about Molech Chafonov by the Komitz Bein HaBeinayim as a din of what? Of the Molech Chafonov and has to be burnt or not. So Bez Hashem, I wish everyone a good Shabbos. We'll see you tomorrow night. Bez Hashem, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock.
A quick question.